Her male best friend mocked me. "We're so close we've even slept together. Does it bother you?" So I shut him down in front of everyone. She snapped, "Apologize or we're over." Weeks later, she finally learned what done really means. It was supposed to be just another casual dinner with her friends, a small gathering, nothing extraordinary. I sat across from her, trying to blend into the background, sipping my drink, listening to the chatter. But then, out of nowhere, her male best friend leaned back, smirking, and said words that froze me mid-breath. "We're so close we've even slept together. Does it bother you?" The room went silent. Laughter died on everyone's lips. Eyes shifted toward me, waiting, curious. My chest tightened. My mind screamed to stay calm, to ignore it. But calm had left the building. Without thinking, I stood up and struck him. Just one solid punch, right there at the table. The sound echoed like a crack in the quiet. His head jerked back, eyes wide. The entire table froze. Mouths hung open. Some gasped. Others stared, unsure if they should intervene. Then she exploded. My girlfriend, the person I trusted most, her face red and furious, pointing a finger at me. "Apologize or we're over." I said nothing. I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. I simply sat back, cold and calm, letting the tension hang heavy in the air. Weeks later, she would finally understand what done really means. Mia and I had only been together for 3 months, but those weeks already felt like a whirlwind. She was warm, playful, the kind of person whose laugh could light up a room. She didn't have a huge circle of friends, just a small group she trusted completely. Among them, there was one person who always stood out, Luke, her male best friend from college. From the first time I met him, I felt uneasy. Luke was charming, funny, and smart, always making jokes and keeping everyone entertained. But there was something about the way he looked at Mia that made my stomach twist. It wasn't overt at first, just lingering glances, a hand that rested too long on her shoulder, inside jokes that seemed a little too intimate. I tried to dismiss it. Mia reassured me multiple times. "Luke and I are just friends. Nothing more, I promise." Her eyes were honest, her tone sincere, and for a while I wanted to believe her. I reminded myself that trust was essential in a relationship, that overthinking could ruin what we were building. Still, those tiny signs kept gnawing at me. Luke showing up unannounced sometimes, texts that seemed unusually personal, touches that lingered a beat too long. I felt a small seed of doubt growing, even though I told myself it was nothing. Mia's personality made it easy to put aside the unease. She was thoughtful, attentive, constantly checking in with me. She sent messages like "thinking of you" or "can't wait to see you later," which reassured me, even if that nagging feeling never fully went away. I wanted to trust her completely, believing that someone who truly cared about me wouldn't betray that trust. Luke, though, had a way of testing boundaries without crossing them outright. His humor was sharp, often too personal. Sometimes he'd make a joke in front of others, a little flirtatious, leaving me feeling small, unsure. I tried to brush it off. I didn't want to seem controlling or paranoid, so I kept my observations to myself. I rationalized, maybe this is just how he is. Nothing more. Those 3 months were a delicate balance. Dates with Mia were wonderful. Playful, affectionate, seemingly genuine. Yet whenever Luke was around, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. A glance that lingered too long, a laugh shared in private, a whisper that Mia quickly covered up. Each moment added weight to my suspicion. Then came the night of the dinner. Mia invited me to a small gathering with her friends, including Luke. The evening started normally, drinks, small talk, laughter, but I felt tension, like static, in the air. Luke's eyes kept darting toward Mia, a smirk on his lips, while Mia's attention subtly shifted. My rational side told me to trust her, to relax, but instinctively, I knew something was off. Little things throughout the night didn't help. Mia placing her phone face down, Luke brushing lightly against her hand, their hushed conversations ending abruptly whenever I looked. I told myself it was nothing, just coincidences, harmless interactions. But my gut screamed differently. I had tried to rely on trust, to give Mia the benefit of the doubt. But patience has limits. There's a line where tolerance becomes foolishness, and that line was about to be crossed. That night, I had no idea the events at that table would change everything. The dinner started casually enough. Drinks were poured. Small talk floated around the table and laughter echoed softly. I tried to focus on Mia, on the moments we shared, convincing myself that my suspicion was paranoia. But Luke had a way of slipping in, lurking at the edges of the conversation, always making jokes that felt just a little too pointed. Then it happened. We were chatting about college memories when Luke leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips, and said the words that made my stomach twist and my chest tighten. "We're so close. We've even slept together. Does it bother you?" The room went silent. I felt every eye turn toward me, some curious, some shocked. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. For a second, I tried to stay calm, tried to tell myself it was a joke, that maybe I was overreacting. But every fiber in me screamed otherwise. I didn't think. I reacted. I stood up and struck him. Just one punch, solid, right there at the table. The sound of it landing echoed like a gunshot. Luke jerked back, eyes wide in disbelief. The table froze. Mouths dropped open. Some gasped, some whispered, unsure if they should intervene. Mia's face went from playful to red-hot fury in an instant. "Apologize or we're over," she shouted, her voice sharp, cutting through the tension like a knife. I didn't say a word. I didn't flinch. I just sat back down, cold and calm, letting the weight of what had happened settle over the room. I knew this wasn't the end. This wasn't just a punch. This was a warning, a line being drawn, a boundary being marked. But I also knew one thing. Reacting here wouldn't solve the underlying problem. Not really. As the evening continued, Luke avoided eye contact, pretending to busy himself with his glass. Mia alternated between glaring at me and pacing briefly, her frustration palpable. I realized that this incident had made her see me differently, maybe as impulsive, maybe as dangerous, maybe as someone she could no longer control. I excused myself early, citing tiredness. On the way home, my mind was racing. I replayed the dinner, Luke's smirk, Mia's anger, the stunned faces around the table. Something had to be done, but I knew it couldn't just be another impulsive reaction. I needed a plan, something that would reveal the truth clearly, indisputably, and make sure no one could deny it. Not Mia, not Luke, not even the people around us who were watching blindly. I spent the next few days thinking, observing, and planning. I pretended to let things slide, texting Mia casually, acting normal whenever Luke reached out. All the while, I was setting up a way to catch the truth in a way that couldn't be ignored. I needed evidence, timing, and a public stage, the kind that would force reality into the open, and so I started my plan. I would pretend to forgive Luke, act as if the punch hadn't happened, even offer a feigned apology if necessary. I would keep track of their movements, subtle and careful, without crossing any lines that could backfire. Then, when the moment was right, I would bring the truth to light, because after what had happened at that dinner, I knew one thing: nothing would ever go back to the way it was. And Mia needed to understand once and for all what done really meant. After that dinner, I knew things couldn't just end with a punch and a cold stare. I had to make sure the truth came out in a way that couldn't be denied. So I started my plan. I sent Luke a text, feigning an apology, acting as if the punch had been an overreaction. "Hey, sorry about the other night. Didn't mean to overreact," I typed. His reply was quick, short, and smug, like he had won some small victory. Perfect. That was exactly what I needed. Then I began following Mia. I kept track of her routine, where she went, who she met. Nothing illegal, just careful observation, noting patterns and timing. I needed to know the truth. I knew she was hiding something, and I couldn't leave it to chance. Days passed as I quietly mapped her movements, staying calm and patient. When the moment felt right, I set the stage. I told a few trusted friends and Mia's parents that I had arranged a small celebration gathering at a nearby hotel. Everyone showed up on time, unaware of what was really happening. Mia had no clue. That afternoon, Mia left, saying she had errands to run. Soon after, Luke arrived at the hotel. Minutes later, Mia joined him. I knew exactly what was going to happen, but I stayed back, waiting, letting the plan unfold. When I was sure, I called everyone in. The door opened and the room fell silent. Mia and Luke were on the sofa, completely unclothed, tangled together, completely exposed when the door swung open. The shock on their faces mirrored the shock in the room. Her parents froze, pale and silent. Friends whispered in disbelief. The tension was suffocating. I stepped forward. I didn't yell or make a scene. I simply acted. I slapped Luke hard, the sound sharp, final. He jerked back, eyes wide. Without hesitation, I slapped Mia just as hard, a sharp, punishing motion. Their faces went pale, frozen in disbelief. For the first time, they realized the consequences of their actions. Luke tried to speak. "It's not—" His voice cracked and failed. Mia's hand scrambled to cover herself, tears streaming down her face. "We weren't—" she stammered. But the words were empty in the presence of everyone who had just witnessed the truth. Her parents' faces were etched with hurt, disappointment, and anger. Friends murmured, whispering to each other, some glaring at Luke, some at Mia. The energy in the room was raw, electric, and heavy with betrayal. I didn't need to explain. The scene spoke for itself. The slaps, the exposure, the presence of witnesses, everything forced the truth into the open. Luke's smirk was gone. Mia's composure shattered. For everyone watching, the betrayal was undeniable. The room was thick with tension. Luke muttered excuses that fell flat. Mia tried to defend herself, but every word sounded hollow. Her parents shook their heads, horrified, while friends looked at me for some reaction, unsure what to say. I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I just let it unfold, letting the truth settle over everyone. Weeks of lies, of secret meetings and whispered messages had led to this one undeniable moment. I had forced clarity. I had made the deception visible and undeniable. Finally, I stepped back. I let the room digest the moment, let the shame, panic, and anger settle over Mia and Luke. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I simply stood there, cold and calm, knowing the line had been drawn. The truth had been revealed. In that silence, I realized something. Exposing the lie wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. Mia and Luke had made their choices. Everyone could see the consequences. I had only made sure that reality could no longer be denied. Weeks of uncertainty, sleepless nights, and doubt had led to this moment. And now finally everything was clear. I knew the boundaries. I knew the truth. And Mia, Luke, and everyone else would never be able to rewrite this reality. Walking out of the hotel, I felt a strange combination of relief and emptiness. Relief because the deception had ended. Emptiness because of the betrayal itself, and the fact that someone I had trusted so deeply had chosen this path. The hallway outside was lit with indifferent fluorescent lights, contrasting sharply with the intensity of what had just transpired. People passed me whispering, curious or sympathetic, but I didn't acknowledge them. My focus was on myself, my choices, and my boundaries. In the days that followed, the fallout was immediate and intense. Mia tried to contact me, sending messages, leaving voicemails, apologizing, begging, and even pleading. Every attempt reminded me of the sleepless nights, the doubt, the nagging anxiety that had driven me to set the plan in motion. None of it reached me. I refused to engage. The line had been drawn and I would not cross it again. Friends split into factions. Some were furious at Luke, some at Mia, some at both. Conversations I had with mutual friends were tense, quiet, awkward, as everyone tried to navigate the betrayal and the new reality. Mia's parents maintained a careful distance from her, speaking in hushed tones that I could overhear. Her standing among friends and family had crumbled in a matter of minutes. For Luke, it was equally devastating. His smug confidence, the little manipulations he had used to charm and deceive, evaporated instantly in front of those who had watched the exposure unfold. Social consequences were immediate. Friends whispered, some turned away, and the weight of accountability was tangible. For me, the clarity was both painful and liberating. The decision to end the relationship was not dramatic or vengeful. It was necessary. I had preserved my self-respect, established boundaries that had been ignored, and removed myself from a situation of deceit and betrayal. The action, though harsh, had been the only way to enforce the truth and protect my own peace. Over the next weeks, I cut ties completely. I blocked Mia, returned shared items, and avoided mutual hangouts. The ache of betrayal lingered, a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. But slowly it began to fade. In its place there was relief. No more doubt, no more uncertainty, no more watching and questioning the people I trusted. Sometimes, late at night, I would remember the hotel room, the shock, the silence, the fear in their eyes. I wondered if people would call my actions too harsh. But I knew they were necessary. I hadn't wanted violence. I had wanted truth, exposure, and accountability. The slaps had been punctuation, not punishment. They had forced the moment into clarity. Ultimately, I learned something about boundaries, trust, and self-respect. Walking away, enforcing the line, and refusing to let lies continue was painful, but it was the only way to reclaim my life. And in that, I found a strange, quiet liberation. I understood what being done truly meant. Not revenge, not spectacle, but clarity, finality, and the power to choose myself over deceit. The betrayal left scars, yes, but it also left lessons. And in the aftermath, I was free to rebuild cautiously, but finally on my own terms. It took me weeks to process everything that happened. The betrayal, the exposure, the fallout. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering if I went too far. Maybe I could have handled it privately. Maybe I could have just walked away quietly and saved everyone the spectacle. But then I'd remember the look on Luke's face when he bragged about sleeping with her. I'd remember how Mia had defended him, how she'd told me to apologize for standing up for myself, and I'd realize that sometimes silence only protects the people who lie the loudest. Exposing the truth wasn't about humiliation. It was about drawing a line that had been crossed too many times. Mia and Luke had built their comfort on my trust, and I'd let it slide again and again because I didn't want to seem controlling, jealous, or paranoid. In the end, that restraint was exactly what they exploited. When I finally walked away from it all, I understood that done isn't about hate. Hate's about closure, the kind that comes from seeing the truth with your own eyes, from refusing to carry someone else's lies any longer. I didn't just lose a relationship that day. I lost the illusion that love alone is enough to protect you from betrayal. Now, when people talk about trust, I think about that hotel room, the silence, the faces, the realization that truth always finds its way out. And maybe that's the hardest lesson I've learned. Sometimes, the only way to heal is to stop being afraid of endings.